Well, I always look forward to this weekend when Julie comes back to tell us what's happened in the past year. And every year she has a story. And on last night, before she told her story, I picked up as a theme about Julie's life the same theme which is in the reading. So let me see if I can tie it all in together. The readings today talk about the importance of serving others, and the line from both the first reading and the gospel is serving and becoming a ransom for all. Serving so that others can be raised up, can be resurrected in one form or another. And so Julie Coyne, for those of you who don't know, is one of our parishioners who for 18 years has been working in Guatemala creating a work of God. She's created this community, and it is a community in which not only children are cared for, but their parents get jobs and graduates come back to work. It is astonishing. And the image I use is the image of the kingdom of heaven here, right before us on earth, just in a concrete and important way. But Julie does it by serving, by giving of herself completely. And the result of her giving herself so dramatically and day in and day out is a resurrection, both in a community and in the lives of an individual. And you're going to hear one of those stories today. And so we're really, really honored and delighted to have our own Julie Coyne.
Good evening. It has been so wonderful to be here this weekend. I thank Father David for your beautiful introduction and for this very gracious annual invitation to address the parish. And I thank all of you for sharing some of your time this Sunday so that I can update you on our work in Guatemala. Today's gospel seems to align with many of the ideas I try to convey about the work we do together in Guatemala. I believe that our outreach at Education and Hope is a particular kind of service that springs from mutuality. Service that I would characterize as being with rather than doing for. It's the kind of service that happens in community, with the recognition that we are all simultaneously in need of healing and in possession of gifts to share. That no one person is greater or less than another. True service depends on our willingness to actively seek this sense of communion, summoning the compassion and generosity of spirit to give where there is need, while allowing our hearts to be open enough to receive the grace that is flowing toward us in return. After 2 decades of life and work in Guatemala, I've begun to see Education and Hope as a collection of stories. Stories of hardship and survival, stories of trauma and resilience, stories of hopelessness and hope encountered. Again and again, I discovered that the theme tying all of our stories together is love. The ways in which our family members grow through an attentive care that helps them to feel worthy of love and belonging. Our mission is to provide education, nutrition, medical care, and jobs, and we have made an indelible impact on our community. But for me, that we have shared love, bestowed kindness, and instilled hope in these lives weighs more than all of the other things combined. Today I'll share the story of just one life transformed through our outreach, made possible through your generous support. It's an ordinary January day at the after-school program. The kids and staff have gathered for snack time, all 150 of them. We call it snack time, but the idea is to serve a second small meal each afternoon to send everyone home with a full belly, knowing that in some families there'll be little for dinner. I had asked for everyone's attention to make a few announcements, but just before dismissing the group, I directed their attention to Fernando. Fernando's life didn't get off to an easy start. His father died when he was just a baby, leaving his mother sole support for their 3 children. She earned only a few dollars a day doing farm labor. The youngest joined her in the fields after school to make a few extra pennies each day. The family lived humbly and worked hard to make ends meet, but even still, there wasn't always enough to eat. While she was still young, Fernando's mother fell gravely ill, and the children couldn't afford the medical care necessary to save her. She died when Fernando was only 13, and he says that without her, his life felt meaningless. Orphaned now, he felt alone enough to wonder whether his life was even worth living. There was no extended family to take in the siblings, so 20-year-old Emiliana assumed the role of parent, and the two have lived together ever since. Having been forced to abandon school for work when she was in the 6th grade, Emiliana always did her best to ensure that her younger brother had what he needed to continue his education. In 2006, Fernando was referred to our program by another scholarship recipient in his village. He began receiving scholarship support in middle school, but we grew to know him better as a high school graduate when he offered to volunteer at the after-school program during our 2-month winter break. It was a gesture of gratitude for his gift of scholarship. After several years of volunteering his time in this way, we were so impressed by his sense of commitment to education and hope and his strong identification with our mission that we offered him a position on our staff. The morning of Fernando's birthday, I found myself thinking about how lonely it might feel to have spent so many years without a parent to make this day special. We were his family now, and I felt drawn to pull him into the spotlight of our love, to remind him how greatly he is cherished and appreciated. Fernando is painfully shy and soft-spoken, and when I announced that we were celebrating a special birthday, he turned bright red, just as I expected. What took me by surprise was the way my words began to catch in my throat as soon as I began to speak. You see, Fernando's job is a very important one. He's the person who directly attends to family members and scholarship recipients that come to our office throughout the day. Many times his interactions entail listening to the stories of whatever complicated situation might be currently affecting that person's life. I always notice him when I pass by, leaning in close to whomever is speaking, listening intently, fully present to whatever is being shared. He makes direct eye contact, and there is great compassion visible in his gaze. This piece of his job, holding sacred space for the story that is being shared with him, and then conveying the details to me and to our staff, is an essential element of our work. Addressing the crowd, I said that I had been very nervous when this important position became vacant. And yet, Fernando's transition was so seamless that somehow now it had felt as if he had always been with us. I told everyone how grateful I was for the loving kindness he so clearly shared with each person who approached him, and that I was deeply impressed by his dedication to what I call holy listening, the act of helping each person he encountered to feel seen and heard. Together we all sang a joyfully loud happy birthday, but by then I was so overcome with emotion that I could barely mouth the words. The kids were dismissed, and I went into the office to give Fernando a hug and apologize for putting him on the spot. As I reached out to wrap my arms around him, he began to shake and then sob. It was a long few minutes that we cried together before he was able to speak. When he did, he said slowly and with great care, "Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for everything. I have never experienced anything like this before, to be surrounded by so much love. I never imagined I would ever again feel so loved by anyone. It is as if my mother has been resurrected in you." Later, Fernando described the day as magical and unforgettable, saying that the moment dedicated in his honor, when everyone simply sang happy birthday, made it one of the happiest days of his life. Back at home that night, I cried again, still carrying the weight of the powerful word Fernando had used, resurrection, the act of rising again to life. Since that day, I've noticed the ways, large and small, that we have been a part of new life rising within our Education and Hope family members. There are so many stories that at first glance feel barren of hope and promise. The orphans without extended family to care for them, the children living in high-risk situations of addiction and abuse, the great suffering and even death caused by the lack of affordable medical care and inadequate nutrition. There are days that the litany of injustices wrought by extreme poverty seems to have no end. As a program, we have been called to be present in a place where despair often reigns. But while the problems we face each day may be beyond our ability to solve, by creating a place of belongings where burdens can be shared, reminding those struggling of their inherent worthiness, we create the connections through which the strength to carry on is derived. The invitation is to community, a place to heal, to acknowledge and support one another, to eradicate the great poverty of loneliness. One of my favorite teachings of Jesuit priest Father Greg Boyle is that we are called to be in the world who God is for us. I believe that our Education and Hope family, here at home as well as in Guatemala, responds faithfully to this call in our attempt to be a source of unconditional love and acceptance, of generosity, blessing, and delight. Our loving presence is the seed of hope from which time and time again, new life has arisen. We believed in Fernando, and we stood beside him at a time when he needed it more than we could even know. With a heart full of love and gratitude, he now does the same in his job, and countless others are touched by his desire to give back. The kindness and tenderness showered on him is something he passes along to all those he encounters throughout his day. And now he's nearing the end of his university studies, a small miracle in its own right, but something that would never have been possible without your support. I'd like to leave you with an excerpt from a letter Fernando wrote to me on his next birthday, where he says, "My name, I ask you to hear your own," as he is truly addressing everyone who has helped this new life to rise within him. On a day as special as today, I'd like to thank you for all your hard work and dedication to Education and Hope. Many dreams are being fulfilled thanks to you. I'd also like to thank you for encouraging me to write about my life history. Expressing myself in this way helped me to release a great emotional weight that was damaging my health. I was carrying a lot of bitterness and resentment, and I wondered to myself, why do these things only happen to me? Why me? When I began to work with the Families of Education and Hope, I started to understand the meaning of my life. I was surprised by the problems I found there. Children without parents, single mothers, poor families. It was then that I realized that I was not the only one who suffered from lack of resources and family problems. When I started to get to know each member of the Education and Hope family and listen to their stories, every single conversation made me reflect on my own life. One night I couldn't sleep, trying to process all of these stories, and I arrived at the conclusion that my life was not worse than anyone else's. From that day forward, when I pray, I no longer ask God, why me? Instead, I simply ask God to show me what is in store for me. God is so great and wonderful, always by my side, and I know now I was never abandoned. God's presence was made manifest in my life through the presence of an angel with a great heart who shares love and affection with every child and every senora who needs it. I consider this angel my hero, and this angel converted into hero in my life is you, Julie. Thank you for everything, for your patience, for your love, for believing in me. Thank you for the job you provided me with, for the financial help that made my studies possible, and for teaching me the true meaning of my life. From you, I have learned the value of compassion, responsibility, and solidarity. I am infinitely grateful to you and to everyone who makes education and hope possible. All of our lives have been deeply blessed by your open-hearted generosity, and we are grateful for all that you share to sustain our work. Thank you for believing in education and hope, and for choosing to walk beside us in solidarity with those who live in great need. Together we are helping so many to find the light within them and then shine it out onto the world. Thank you.
If you were watching the slides really closely, you may have noticed that some of the visitors to Education Hope were wearing Holy Cross sweatshirts because of my alma mater's Holy Cross. And last June, the college sent 11 or 12 students for a week at Julie's place to get an experience of what life is like in Guatemala. And they all came back renewed and transformed and singing the praises of education and hope. So Julie's work is spreading far and wide.